Today I finished reading Michael Kohlhaas by Heinrich von Kleist. Uh, so I'm reading this, I've finished it, but I was reading this as basically homework for a book that has just come out in English translation called Schadenfreude by Michael Lentz. The publisher of that English translation, Deep Vellum, made this Instagram post of like suggested media to be familiar with before reading Schadenfreude, and I'm so excited about Schadenfreude that I took that post very seriously, and I bought a bunch of the books that were in it and listened to some of the music that was in it. But this was one of the books they mentioned as something that if you're familiar with it beforehand, it might enhance your understanding of Schadenfreude. So I read this. It's very short, 112 pages. Um, and I had a lot of fun with it. So this is quite old. It was written in I think 1810, early 1800s for sure. The author died in 1811, so yeah, I'm pretty sure 1810 is when the book came out. But it is a historical novel covering true events. It's based on a true story. Some things are embellished, names are changed, but it's based on a true story that took place in the 1530s. So basically, the premise is this horse breeder in Germany, in the electorate of Brandenburg, um, in the 1530s. He is traveling from Brandenburg to Saxony, I think specifically the city of Dresden, to sell some of his horses. And along the way, a corrupt nobleman from a region adjacent to his homeland uh, confiscates two of his horses due to a completely fabricated, false like tariff basically on people traveling to sell horses. He confiscates two of the horses and then does some other abuses of power. And Michael Kohlhaas, the horse dealer, he tries to sue this corrupt nobleman in court after he realizes that the whole thing was based on not actual laws. It was just a scam, basically. He tries to sue the guy to get his horses back. Um, and it doesn't really work because this nobleman has a bunch of friends in court. Um, so he tries to go through a couple different channels. He ends up writing a letter to somebody higher up in the feudal hierarchy, and his wife offers to deliver the letter because the guy that they were delivering this letter to about the lawsuit was a former suitor of hers before she married Michael Kohlhaas. And she's like, well, obviously I'm married to you, he's married to his wife now, but we have this past, so maybe if I give him the letter, maybe he'd be more inclined to help. Um, and unfortunately, before she can even get to the guy, his guards assault her. They like hit her with the butt of a spear. She ends up dying of her injuries. So his lawsuits have gone nowhere. He still doesn't have his horses that he wants back. And now his wife is dead. He's so angry that he sells all of his land and a lot of his possessions. He just keeps his weapons, and then he goes out into the land belonging to this corrupt nobleman, um, and is trying to exact his revenge. But the nobleman is gone from his castle by the time he gets there, so then he goes on this whole rampage. So that's the premise. That's the part that people usually talk about when they talk about this book, when I've seen like reviews or summaries online. But really that's only like the first like 40-ish pages of the book, 40 or 50 pages out of 112. And the back half of the book is essentially a medieval, or I guess not really medieval, but early modern legal drama. It's like it's just all of these convoluted court proceedings between Michael Kohlhaas and the nobleman who stole his horses, and then these other noblemen who are like interceding on behalf of one party or the other. Um, so that's really more than half of the book is this essentially courtroom drama. which is not what I was expecting going in, but I actually found it really interesting. Um, I don't know how accurate it is to 16th century court proceedings. I don't know if it's exactly how they worked, but it was entertaining. And yeah, so again, not what I was expecting from this book. And really the part where he's a bandit roving the countryside is only like 10 pages. You've got like 30 or 40 pages of buildup of the abuses of this corrupt noble, and then like 10 pages of a very fast, almost like a historical chronicle of the couple months that he spends as a bandit, with this band of followers. And then the rest of the book, like 60 pages or so, 60 or 70 maybe, is this legal drama. Uh, but I enjoyed it. And um, I think the main idea here, which is actually like explicitly stated in the first couple sentences of the book, you know what? I'll just read that. Um, in the middle of the at once one of the most righteous and appalling individuals of his time, both righteous and appalling. Until his 30th year, this unusual man would have been accounted the very model of a good citizen. In the village that still bears his name, he owned a farm that provided him with a comfortable living. The children his wife gave him, he brought up in the fear of God, to be hard-working and loyal. There was not one among his neighbors who hadn't benefited from his charity and his fair dealing. In some, the world would have blessed his memory, if he hadn't followed one of his virtues to excess. His sense of justice led him to robbery and murder. So that's the whole idea. It's explicitly stated here in the first paragraph of the book. The idea is that he's almost a perfect, righteous, pious person, except his tragic flaw is that his sense of justice is too strong, and it leads him on this insane quest for vengeance where he does a lot of terrible things. He burns cities to the ground. He murders people. He steals, and uh, where was I going with that? Oh, a funny thing that happens. So at one point, Martin Luther, the guy who started the Reformation, writes basically an open letter, reprimanding Michael Kohlhaas, and that's real. That happened in the historical events that this is based on. Martin Luther was writing about it and reprimanding the guy. Um, but the second part, I don't know if this happened in real life. Michael Kohlhaas responds to that by breaking into Martin Luther's house in the middle of the night to argue with him about it. And, well, to argue with him about it, but then also he has an idea that I'll get to in a minute. But when they're arguing, something really funny happens. I should have bookmarked the page, but I'll just try to explain it from memory. Um, Martin Luther basically acknowledges, like, yeah, some of the stuff this nobleman did to you was messed up, but you're taking it way too far. Like, this is ridiculous. You should have just tried the lawsuit, and if that didn't work, just accept it. There's not a lot you can do here. You've taken it way too far. And Michael Kohlhaas is basically like, yeah, I probably took it way too far, but this thing has its own momentum now. They specifically use the word momentum, which I found very funny. This idea that his sense of justice has its own momentum that's just pulling him. I guess it's tragic, but it's also kind of funny. I think it's intended to be funny. I certainly found it a little bit funny. But then, yeah, so he comes up with this plan. He's like, "Hey, Martin Luther, could you intercede on my behalf with the local authorities, grant me safe passage, um, to the city of Dresden for me to pursue this lawsuit and for it to actually be taken seriously? And if you can give me that, I will tell my men to stand down and I'll throw down my weapons and all of this robbing and looting and destruction will end." And that ends up happening, but then basically, as I said, the second half of the book follows all of the drama of the court proceedings, and he ends up getting screwed over, and he ends up being put to death. Although kind of a happy ending, he is able to secure safe passage out of the region of of the jurisdiction that this is happening under, safe passage out of the region for his children, and they survive, and his descendants um stick around for generations to come. So, bit of a happy ending for him in that sense. And it is also a happy ending in the sense that the nobleman who started all of this does get sent to prison for 2 years, and Michael Kohlhaas gets to hear that before he is put to death. And he's so happy about it that he just completely accepts his fate. He's like, okay, yeah, fair enough. I'm getting put to death, but the guy that I wanted vengeance on is going to prison for 2 years. I'll take it, and he's totally happy with that. After, of course, his children have been sent to safety, um, he's happy with that outcome. So yeah, it's this was really fun. Kind of a tragedy, not tragedy in the way that we use that word nowadays, but tragedy in the sense of like Greek plays where it or Shakespeare plays where it's like a heroic figure who has like a particular flaw that leads them down a bad road. Um, Obviously, in this case, his pursuit of vengeance, his sense of justice being too strong and too violent would be the tragic flaw. So it's kind of a tragedy in that sense, but it's also very funny at times. Um, yeah, Kohlhaas is funny in the just his personality is very funny. Um, a lot of the noblemen that are abusing power are very funny, and how nakedly corrupt and kind of pathetic they are. So that's really fun. And yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. Again, I picked it up as basically homework for another book that I want to read, that I'm going to be starting sometime in the next month or two, probably. There's a couple other things I want to read kind of as homework for that, and a couple things that I'm reading right now that I want to finish before I dive into that because it's like 1,000 pages long and not easy to read as far as I'm aware. So this was basically homework for that book, Shot and Fro. But I ended up really enjoying it, and I'll probably reread it at some point. Honestly, this is one I see myself coming back to, because it's so fun and so short. I read this in like less than 48 hours. I think today is Thursday. I finished this earlier today, this afternoon. I think I either started it last night or the night before. So yeah, um, I enjoyed this one, and that is all.